Boom. I think I am live. Boy, I thought I was gonna have to not do this one. I thought I was gonna get canceled out. But you can't keep a good man down. Can everybody hear me? I am so sorry. I've had so many internet problems. We had a storm last night. I don't know what happened. It seemed like I had no problems till I tried to get on here. Then all of a sudden, everything went down. It caused my computer to reboot. That took forever. I got down uploads, and then man. So I apologize, everybody. I didn't think I was gonna be able to get on here. So anyway, I think that the link is stable. Can everybody hear me and hopefully see me? Let me adjust this lighting. Damn. Boy, that should not have been that difficult. I swear something does not want me to do this. Oh, it's not good lighting either. This teleconnection's not good. Hold on. Wow, this is a trip. This has never been this difficult before. Well, it has been actually on mine, but normally it's not this bad. Okay, I think I've got it situated. All right. Okay. It's about as good as it's going to get, I think. I'm sorry. Okay. Who that's burned me out a little bit. All right. Is everybody here? Is everybody, can you hear me? Let me look down here. We can hear you. Sunfire Goddess Tamara, thank you for being here. Auntie Erin, thank you for being here. Kyle Smith, you always supporting. Thanks for being here. Again, I apologize. Everybody waiting on me for 23 minutes. I'm so sorry. I was going to try to do it with my phone, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing and how to log on outside of YouTube. I knew eventually the technology was going to catch me again. Brooke Michelle, Jonaside, thank you for being here. Mr. Bleep, I think it says. Quantum Rays, thank you for being here. Quantum Rays, was that you that asked me a question? It was about, I don't know, was that you asked me a question about CERN? And I had responded with John Teeter and kind of that situation and some things about Fermilab and maybe Cosmotron. But something else I think you asked me about that I didn't get the time to respond. It was Dan Burris and J-Rod. You know, I've heard some things that make the J-Rod story kind of questionable. But you have other entities that have said similar. And specifically what comes to mind is the Hopi, and the Hopi speak of the ant people. Because J-Rod said he was from the future when there would be a cataclysm and humans had to go underneath the earth. But ant people said there was a cataclysm in the past that caused humanity to go underground and develop these insectoid features. And they came up, started helping the Hopi, at least to my knowledge of it. And what's really interesting when concerning that, looking back at, oh gosh, I want to say Randolph Winters. That was his name. Guy I met, Randall, that does the pre-flood design. Gosh, yeah, my mind is off because of this whole internet thing. I'm sorry. Anyway, he talks about the pre-flood things, or just before flood, how the Ice Age ended. Randall Kramer. Oh gosh. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Point being, I've done some videos about the guy. I should know his name. Point being, he talks about like the end of the Dryas era and the end of the Ice Age, and how that's actually when this cataclysm would have happened, would have caused anything on top of Earth to be pummeled, and those that were go underground. So I mean, that's the first time that's happened on this planet, but maybe the most recent for our exploration at this time. You know what I mean? At least for how much we're being lied to. Randall Carlson, that's his name. Sorry, Randall Carlson. Okay, I'm coming back. Okay, trying to throw me off the game, but man, it can't throw a good man. What's that Public Enemy song? I'll just listen to it. Yo, Chuck, you can't keep a good man down. I like the PE. It was interesting because you got these militant brothers. You got the S1W, and then you got this buffoon up there, don't boy, with the clock, and I never got it. And I found myself watching, when he was married to Bridget Nielsen. They tried out some chicken at a chicken place out down south. She's all Fifi. Anyway, so just the stuff we go through and see. All right, I'll make sure everybody checks in here. This is an intense topic, and I have some notes here and stuff broke down, and I have a whole slug, a ton of pictures to show. So I'm just going to go with it. Maybe instead of trying to do this outline, because I feel like it's going to keep us here forever. So I'll just break down the knowledge and what I know and what caused me to do this particular live, and then go through the pictures, maybe secondary, and it will just back up what I already explained to you. And in case my explanation, which is rudimentary, sucks, you can go back. I've got videos on this channel over all this stuff. And you can also research the terms and the science yourself. You don't need me. Okay, it's about personal discovery. See, Kyle Smith going down here again. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure I got everybody that checked in here. Adrian, can't pronounce the last name, but thank you for coming. I suck with names. And sadly, that's not a new thing, sadly. Everybody. Scripts 1113, thank you for being here. Rachel, thank you for being here. Oh yeah, sorry, I've got to do all that. There we go. All right, I'm starting to get my groove back here. They try to rob me of my vibe, but it's coming back. It's been kind of just a stressful week though. Oh. Okay, well, okay. Oh boy. Press the wrong button. I want to thank everybody for being here, though, for taking the time to come and kind of hang out. Washington State. Thank you, Joyce Hartman. Thank you for being here. Yeah, Washington, interesting place. A lot of activity up there in Washington, especially when it comes to the Sasquatch thing going on. Very, very interesting. Okay, so to the topic. So I don't keep everybody here all afternoon. I'm trying to get these down to like 90 minutes or less. Good luck with that, Littleton. Anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this particular subject up, which is the UFOs and the MECOs, also called, or black holes, also called MECOs, as in magnetospheric eternally collapsing objects, being magnetospheric, that they're actually circular in that way with the magnetic fields, which goes against something that we've heard about black holes. When I was younger, we always heard black holes didn't have hair, which means they don't have magnetic fields, but they do. And that's been proven by Rudy Shields and these other people when it comes to the MECO. Eternally, because you've got things going through it, collapsing objects. So it's really interesting, you know, and Rudy may not have been the only person to actually find it, but he was major when it comes to the understanding, the collecting of the data of the MECOs themselves. And a lot of you know by now that I did some work, private work with Dr. Rudy Shields. We kind of became friends. For a couple months, he would just call me once a week. We had a set time and we talked for a couple hours. And it was really, really cool because he was not an experiencer, but he is astrophysicist that was the head of Harvard for a while. He was retired by the time I talked to him and everything. But it's really interesting. So, you know, it was as far as giving me validation, it took me in another way scientifically with my experiences. And he took an interest in several of my experiences that we'll talk about today, just to correlate it with these other things. Now, the reason that I'm bringing up this UFO and black hole live is it's based on, you say, I still am a big fan of here we go. Oh damn. Here we go. I've got so many of his books. Preston did it. Still a fan of Preston did it. Okay. He and I was watching something that he had put out with this lady named Dolly Serafin, or Sefran, Sefran. I've seen they've done quite a bit of work today, or work together. I'm going to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of it, okay? I always wanted to kind of work with Preston, and I never got that opportunity. And I had actually, after Christine had done all my work, I wound up talking to him on the phone one day. Well, let me rephrase that. I wound up talking, he listened for a long time. It was really cool, but we never seemed to get together on anything, so I kind of I haven't watched everything he's put out, but a lot of it, I still like it all. But this lady, Dolly Serafin, Okay. She said something, and it was I haven't watched all of her stuff. Okay, I don't know everything she's talking about. It caused me to watch that episode that they put out. It was really good, and a couple others. And I noticed that she has a habit of she seems to offend some people. I guess she's quite blunt. I think it's kind of funny, to be honest with you. Anyway, but she claims to have been around some grays and been on board vehicles and things like that. And I can tell she's a real contactee because she said something. And it's something that you would only know if you've been through it. And she had described a certain type of emitters that were on board this craft that was what Bob Lazar calls the sports model. In fact, let me see if I can actually, if I have a, I don't think I don't have a picture of that one pulled up. I'm sorry. Anyway, everybody's familiar with Lazar, but it's the one that that he called the sports model. She said she'd been on board several of those. And she was describing the emitter and the propulsion system, how it's connected at 115 and all that. And then she made a comment of sometimes in front of the engine, you see this black dot. And then she made the comment that the ship is using actually magnetic light lensing. That's pretty good that she knows that. She had to have known that because, like, for example, when I say that, she described it how the emitters actually bend the light itself. Now, that's one way, or something that I've told you, okay, which is the crafts that I've described that I've been on board, especially the first one, all right, from adult onset experiences. I want to know what that thing was made of, especially during the experiences, before, after, all that. And what came to me is, I've said this, and I've been saying this since I came forward in 2014. Look at the first interview I did. I've never changed. This is just what I know. Okay. It's not the only thing going down, but it is worthy. And people have commented, oh, you talk about your own experiences only. Not only, but it's a good frame of reference for me. And it gives me a baseline because I hear so much fantastical BS in these communities, and I can't deal with half of it. Okay. And it's the same stuff repackaged that was being said in the late 80s and the 90s. Almost the exact same stuff, and it burns me out, okay? I'm at a point of going for consciousness and awareness, not just fantasy, all right? Anyway, so sorry, let me go off on my little tangents. But anyway, back to this. When dealing with, like, there's certain ways that they can do the magnetic lensing, okay, light lensing. And the way she's described is one, or like the ships I've been on board, like I was mentioning, the compound that they're made of, which one is metamaterials, like metals from planets that are devoid of Van Allen belts and often atmospheres. They get hit by cosmic radiations like unknown here on Earth. Okay. The other thing is a quasi-crystal, quasi-photonic crystal, the type that I think that they grow or grows on these different planets or different dimensions that has some sort of a bioluminescence to it also. They use that also, okay? Then there is DNA from the crew, or like more like maybe energy plasma, even life energy from the crew, all right? And then there's the fungal component, the mycelium component. And this is what they have put in my mind when I was touching that thing, asking what this is, okay? And that makes this compound that they grow over a MECO, I think a mini MECO, a mini black hole. And that's why the engine is temporally displaced. I've talked about that a lot. But anyway, the reason that I'm bringing this up, and now I think maybe it's time to start showing pictures. Why not just start going for it now? Okay. Sadly, since the computer went down, I didn't get to pull them all up. So I'm going to be even slower than normal. But we gonna get there, yo. We gonna get there. Okay. And I'll show. Like I said, I'll show the pictures again later, so everybody will have it, or at least I'll repeat the things that I've been saying through the pictures too, just so everybody gets a good idea without me just going on and on. Okay. I'll hopefully get it faster here. Everything closed on me. Okay, photonic quasicrystals. There's just something here. And, you know, when it comes to our science, you've got those scientists that are growing these in labs, and they've got different ways of doing it. And the reason why they really caught my attention is because one of the engines that I've showed you, or brain, whatever it is, and also the instruments that those Andromedans had very odd looking lattices inside their crystals. They just looked odd to me, okay? And not just that, but they're pulsing with light too. That takes it to another level. But just when dealing with this type of metamaterial, this photonic crystals that are involved with this metamaterial, which includes metals mined from planets devoid of Van Allen belts and sometime atmospheres, okay, it has the capability, this skin, this thing that they grow, this compound, it has the ability to bend light as well, okay? And, you know, when dealing with the bending of light, I want to say that, look, I'm not a scientist, so these people can come and blow me away on this, but I'm trying to understand what I've experienced, all right? There's a difference between light lensing and then magnetic gravitational lensing. Gravitational lensing, that has to do with bending gravity as opposed to bending light. But when dealing with substances that can bend light, this is one of them, of these craft that they've explained it to me. And that takes us all into that metamaterial and things that we have now. So these are things, like I said, anybody can look up, yo. Let's see. Okay. I'm just going to show this because everybody's seen this, but I think it's important. And I'm not going to show when this thing was activated. All right. I'm going to show the one where it was actually deactivated because it's just easier for me to get to right now. And I've shown you this before, and I call this the quasi-crystal engine. I don't know what but I think in retrospect, it actually was a brain. And like I've mentioned before, this thing is very big. And I know somebody was taking issue with me last time because I said I believe it's closest in our science is the dynamic Casimir effect inside a superconductive circuit and dealing with that boron type technology. I think that's what this is closest to. Best on that magnetic containment. I believe that the top and the bottom and those plates are there that create the Casimir effect. They're going up. And mind you, this thing was huge. These crystals are like the size of a basketball goal. They're like 10 feet tall, 10 feet long, about 3 feet wide. And why I'm bringing this up is because when these things started spinning, I mentioned before that I couldn't see them anymore. And it seemed to almost that they were spinning so fast, but it was creating a type of a void. And that makes me wonder, was it creating a MECO? So this is just things that I'm giving to you because we're dealing with also conscious technology that comes from, you know, another universe. I think this stuff I was dealing with, not just other dimensions, these beings from other universes. And that's something Dr. Shields kind of forced me to deal with. So anyway, I won't spend any more time on that because I've shown that to you before. But I think it's important when, in fact, let's just go with the pictures here. Let's just kick it, yo. Let's kick it. And I'll just kind of keep going. And here, this one is, again, just a reference. Oh, damn. This one is a reference just to in terms of MECOs. All right. It's pretty simplistic, but I just want everybody to see it. Magnetospheric eternally collapsing object. And I told you why they're called that. Then these are black holes. And what we're going to do is kind of go over maybe what's different from the MECO and the black hole, or how they are not quite the same thing. And it's maybe evolving that whole concept just a little bit more. All right. When dealing with some of the primary things about the black hole, it's worth showing this. and then we'll go through over some of the differences too, all right, between them and MECO. And it's pretty cool because I can describe it as my understanding how Rudy had described it to me. And I got to spend a little bit of time trying to understand it because it's pretty advanced, but he seemed to think that I was on the level of understanding it. Anyway, there's a region outside the Ventnor black hole known as the regosphere, where the space-time rotates so abruptly that sends the object inside of the region, split into two parts, yada, 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 escapes and proceeds to black hole slowly. And so that's dealing with one of the parts of the black hole. But then what I want to do is kind of go into the MECO itself. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm going to pull that one up. Hold on. I'll get it. All right. Now this is a pretty advanced sketch here, but what I'm going to try to do is use this to illustrate how Rudy had described it to me. All right. Yeah, here we go. And this is actually this is one of the ones that he had sent to me when we were talking. Okay. Right here. See, Rudy's name's even on there. Anyway, so, but the way he described this to me, okay, is the black hole you have there, but inside of the black hole is the MECO. And it's actually the mechanism, okay, that holds the memory for the black hole. So when something, I don't know if you all can see me here still, but I'm doing this now, and I've said this like a dozen times, okay? So I know it's repetitive, but it's important, okay, is that when something goes through the MECO, which is all the objects and all the matter that's going through the black hole, when it goes through, it creates a perfect copy on the surface of the black hole called the quantum hologram. And it's the MECO itself that stores that information of the quantum hologram. So in that way, the beginning of the MECOs in the middle is going to be the beginning of the MECOs all the way to the outside, which would be current universe. And the same way matter wraps around the accretion disk, the information wraps around the MECO itself. Okay? So, so when I've said this again, when dealing with the Akashic records and what they are, people say the records of space and time. Nobody really could say what they are. They're these MECOs, these black holes. Now I got another one I'm gonna bring up now. So we could cook it. Oh, it's cooking hard right now. All right. Another one that he sent to me and we talked about. I'm gonna show that one too. Yeah, getting my groove back on. Feel slightly dehydrated from technical difficulties though, like the rifleman when he walked through the desert, McCain. Anyway, okay, here we go. The slight difference, okay, is Rudy had pointed out to me that black holes are not supposed to have magnetic fields. And in actuality that they do, and it's the MECO that actually creates the magnetic field from inside the black hole itself. So that's what was always said when we were kids. We heard, oh, black holes don't have hair, meaning they don't have they don't have magnetic fields, but they do. And to the point, and as Rudy would point it out to me, he said they call them black holes, but in truth, they're really not. They're also the most brilliant things in the universe. And he started showing me schematics of like quasars and showing me the MECO inside of quasars and different stage of star development. All right. So anyway, photons can escape from its surface. Okay. It doesn't have a singularity. All right. But I think Rudy was telling me that technically that they do, because they are black holes, and that these two things actually go together. Laws of physics. And I think that it doesn't work either way on it. But that's just some things. And the main thing he kept pointing out to me was the factor of the magnetic fields. and how much that has to do connected to the quantum hologram through the gravitational pull, all these things. Okay, so boom. All right. I was watching that. I was watching the Green Mile was on last night, and the cat when they were frying that dude, the one cat sitting there, oh, he's a cooking now. He's cooking now. Okay, that's not funny. Okay. Anyway, okay. Let's go back to the MECOs, folks. Okay, something that I want to talk about what the MECOs actually operate on. Okay, they operate on what they're calling now conscious waves, even quantum conscious waves, already called that. Okay, and the conscious waves occur in two ways: helical and spherical. Okay, so that's like the frequency that these MECOs are on in that way. Now, taking this and turning this into something that connects with our body. Okay, and here we're gonna need a picture for this. It's something called, and I've been talking about this for a while, but it's different when I can't actually show it and I'm just saying it. So maybe this helps out a little bit. All right, connecting this, okay, to that something in our body that's called microtubules. Okay, boom, boom. Okay, here, and we have microtubules throughout our brain, throughout our bodies. Okay, and for this one, I'm going to say that we're going to relegate it more to the microtubules of the brain that you're seeing there lit up too. Okay, the microtubules of the brain are helical. Okay, so in that way, the brain waves of our helical microtubules of the brain can match the brain, the wave, the conscious waves of the MECO. Okay, and that's that. So I think that is a very, very, it's very, very important. And something else I'm going to show. I'm just keep it cooking. While we're going on there, and what I'm going to go into here is this because this is really important. God, sorry, one day I'll put all this together as just one. It'll be really easy for everybody. But until then, we still gonna get that information out there. I don't give a damn if I'm a bit slower or not, because this backs up more than what I'm saying than me just gibber jawing, which a brother tends to do sometimes. Okay, this is the microtubules, and it shows how they're constructed and how they're helical. Okay, and for this, what we're talking about here, this helical microtubules. For what we're talking about here, we're going to address, which are the microtubules of the brain. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I know it's taking a second, but man, this is important. And I'm managed to not lose my train of thought too, which is cool. Okay, for what we're talking about here, like I said, we're going to relegate this to the neurons of the brain, the microtubules of the brain, and they form something called the mirror neuron network. Okay, and basically what that is not just similar to the monkey grab, release, and reflex. It's also connected to not just empathy, but to understanding in terms of when I'm telling you this story, you can see it in your own memory, okay, in your own mind's eye. Okay, here, let's get off this one. I've got a better one for microtubules than this one. We're gonna get that to that. I didn't bring that one down. Damn it. Got a better illustration of microtubules than that. There it is. Boom, there you go. Sorry, that took me a sec. Okay, here we go. Mirror neuron networks and the mirror neurons and what they do. I just kind of told you how they can also, the ability to what I'm telling you now, you can see it in your mind's eye. I'm telling you in a story, you can see it in your mind's eye. Okay. And in that way, the way that duplicates each other, the mirror neuron network, this is quite similar to what I just described to you concerning the MECOs and the quantum hologram. You see what I'm saying? Information goes through the black hole, and then like the same way somebody telling the information here, so you reproduce it in your mind's eye, but the quantum hologram is put on the surface, or it creates this perfect copy. So the mirror neuron network kind of favors the quantum hologram and that part of the MECO themselves. So this tells you that we can use our brain waves to access the conscious waves of the MECOs, the AKA Akashic records. Okay, that's important. And I mentioned this before. Somebody jumped my case and said, I asked Rudy, I said, what do you think the speed of thought is? And he gave some type of experiment. And I'm sorry, I'm not a scientist. I don't know what it was he was talking about, but he gave some type of an experiment. And he said that they estimated that the speed of thought was around 100,000 times the speed of light. That part I wrote down. He said 100,000 times the speed of light. Therefore, it's almost instantaneous for us to get to one of these MECOs through the speed of thought, which would be instant. So this is saying that this mirror neuron network and these black holes operate like the black holes are like the hard drives of the universe. That's really important. We start thinking as a network and travel and conscious travel and things of this nature. Okay, it expands our parameters. All right, got that one tackled. Okay, now going further. Okay, I got that out. I got that part. Oh, yeah, now I know what I'll show you. Okay, so when dealing with the UFO, and I'm gonna show you some pictures of this. And before they make that jump in through one of these MECOs, the frequency jump, you might want to call it, going through the aperture, that creates that quantum hologram. Okay, and so when you have one UFO there, and then all of a sudden there's two, then there's just one again, then that one's gone. That's that quantum hologram. That's this whole process that we're talking about here. Mirror neuron network, excuse me, all that stuff. So, and I want to show a couple examples of that. Yeah, which is just pictures that you can find, but they're good examples of the quantum hologram though. So it's worthy showing them, I do believe. Here's one. It's a really old one. I want to say that this was like over the Chrysler building or something, somewhere like that or something. Anyway, but this one is one, and this is one that Rudy had sent to me. He says a great example of it, Barry, right there. You're seeing one and you're seeing two, and one of them's already fading out, and that's the one that, the one that's probably gone through as the other one, but the other one is not going to be stable. It's the quantum hologram. So that's an example of it. And I've got another one. I've always liked this one here too. I know, like on Jessica's show, I must have mentioned this so many times on Jessica's show or my own, but it's to a point of where it's like, wow, what's the hell is he talking about? Okay, here's another example right there of something that's going into, you seeing 2, 1 to none, the quantum hologram. And, this takes us into something. I'm going to go further with this. Okay. When it comes to these black holes and these quantum holograms, this whole thing, these MECOs, we've got the ones that can become supermassive when they start combining. All right. And I've showed before how I believe when you look at ancient cave paintings, certain ancient cave paintings, especially the one in France, excuse me, how I believe they're actually showing more of a network, it's more of a map, as opposed to the beings that we think that they're showing on some of those. It's showing actually this black hole network and how it's actually a traveling system. All right. But this takes us into something else. This takes us into these ships that can generate like miniature black holes on their own, and into something else. Wow, where am I going to go for this? You know, I'll wait and talk about the ships that can generate when I go to my own experiences. But when thinking about actually how this can go from not just the macro, which is the gigantic black holes or the MECOs in the middle of galaxies, okay, let's think about the ones that takes it completely to the micro. All right. Glad to close all those. Sorry, somebody. Okay. Something else. Okay, so when talking about that, let's take it not just we're taking it to the miniature. I want to talk about how this can affect our bodies in two different ways. Okay, one is I had talked to Rudy and he described actually, again, it was some sort of calculations they had to where they thought they could attach the actually individual, the MECO to each of our individual cells of our body, perhaps even molecules, but the cells of our body, each one of them has a MECO attached to it. Okay. So when dealing with something like what I talked about with Corey Good in that video him and I did, which some people liked, some people didn't, but what he had said, you know, whether his testimony is true or not, I don't know, but it's interesting information, all right? And I've got, you know, I know there's so much bureaucracy surrounding him. People get mad when I mention him, but somebody that I met along this journey. And I know he's some sort of contactee, whether people like it or not. The lies, where that begins and ends, is not for me to judge. But I will say I want to know most what he knew about melanin-dominant extraterrestrials. Did he meet them? What do you have to say? And he talked about who he now calls the Zulu. But he mentioned that how they have the ability to access the black holes attached to their cells of their body, and they use that for galactic teleport. Now, I've heard that before through people that had studied Kemet, and I've heard that about the beings that were from Triangulum, the brothers, the giants from Triangulum, that they were able to do that too. And thus, they're never been conquerable because they don't need technology to do intergalactic jumps. Okay, so anyway, just, you know, food for thought on that. But I do want to break that down from what Rudy had said about the individual molecule or individual MECO attached to our cells of our body to something else that I've talked to you before. Okay, when I was younger, you know, I thought maybe I couldn't see because I wasn't seeing the cool colors around people, the black, the yellows on their bodies and all that stuff. I was seeing the energy field around people. Like this, now they call it the luminous cocoon, but it looks similar to that. And I saw a general shape around people that was either oval, spherical, or sometimes mushroom-like. But always in the middle of this light of this biofield was this black spot, just a little like a black dot. Okay, and that would be called by like Toltec people, Castanet and them. They would call that the assemblage point. And what is said about the assemblage point is that the universe is light filaments that go through everything and go through our luminous cocoon, our biofield. But the filaments that go through the black circle, the assemblage point, assemble the world that we perceive. So, as I described that, might as well go to pics now because that's enough talk. And I've got a couple of them. I'll just show you all of them because I've already described what it is. So just getting more of to activate your mirror neuron network. We'll do a couple of pics. Boom. Boom. Okay. Assemblage point. And where I would see it is on the front of people's luminous cocoon if they were standing in front. And it was normally around the solar plexus area is where I saw it. And I found out later that's called the band of man, that area around the solar plexus. And it normally the assemblage point stays on this fixed point on the front of the luminous cocoon around the solar plexus. And that keeps the world that we perceive third dimensionally solid perceptually for us. So that's just one. I've got several pictures of this, so I'm going to just keep throwing them up here. This is another one. This one's similar to the illustration, but like again, it's just to get feeling for it. Oh, are they getting quicker? Oh, and I've got two others I'll show. This is a little more accurate. What I would see, where I would see this black spot, is about probably 3 inches down, right where our solar plexus is, normally on the left side of a person. Well, I guess, well, yeah, kind of on the left side, more is what I would see. But that's supposed to be the stable point of the assemblage point where people perceive this world. They don't quite have it there on this one, so it'll be down a little. But nonetheless, so if you moved the assemblage point, when you move the assemblage point, like during sleep, it moves, or when it moves even just a little bit, as long as it's along the band of man, let's say that's down lower than this one on the left, okay, you're going to assemble a world that is similar to Earth, similar to this one. But when you move outside that band of man, the solar plexus area of the luminous cocoon, different universal filaments start flowing through the assemblage point, and you perceive a completely different world. I'm going to show the other two ones that I have just because they're really cool illustrations. I think are worthy. Of course, now everybody can just AI stuff now, so nothing's really unique anymore. But hey, that's all right. And I'm telling everybody this for a reason, because I'm trying to show you, illustrate actually how this connection is. It's, you know, what the assemblage point is. It's a MECO. It's a MECO on our luminous cocoon. Here's a cool one right here. I'll let everybody just kind of read that. It's what I kind of was telling you, but it's just interesting to hear it. Excuse me. So if you get a point where you have moved the assemblage point, like where they're showing you here on the luminous cocoon, what kind of universal filaments are flowing through way out there that's going to assemble what kind of world? And this takes us into what Carlos Castaneda talked about, the world of inorganic beings and all these different things. But we got a lot more than that. We start dealing with exploring the universe in this way as light beings, as energy beings. That's what this is. Boom. Yeah. But like I said, I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. You know what I mean? Until I found some material that explained it. I just know I was seeing it on everybody. And what's even more interesting is I started seeing other shapes of luminous cocoons that did not conform to human parameters. They weren't spherical. They weren't oval. They weren't mushroom-like. They looked like a pyramid or like a twisted thing or something. You know what I mean? Or an X. But then when you look at them with your regular third eye, they look like people, two people sitting on a bus or something. You know what I mean? But they're not. They're not what they appear to be. And, you know, I know that takes us into people on NPCs and backdrop people and all that stuff. And I think that does a part of that. But I mentioned before how, you know, we've got the Earth that we're familiar with here, third dimensional consciousness, that has beings, that has consciousness with organism. And in the other Earth that is more energetic, astral, all these things, frequency, you know, you have beings that have consciousness with no body, no organic, those things. So, you know, and those beings like that jump into our field of awareness all the time on this planet, from other dimensions, from space. I mentioned to you last week, I talked about that Earthbound Spirit release I had done. And this thing was some type of, first I thought it was a demon, but it's some type of an ET, but it was just as demonic. It was dark as hell. You know what I mean? So I guess it doesn't matter. if it's rather demonic or ET or interdimensional, whatever, they're all effed up and they're on that dark agenda, tripped out, and they're predatorial. Bottom line. Anyway, stop sharing that. One more assemblage point picture is just kind of cool. And then I'll get off the assemblage point. But that's why I'm bringing this up. It's just to say that it's a part of us and a part of our construct when you start looking at us spiritually and as light beings and as energy beings. Not just this, you know what Yoda said? Luminous beings are we, not just crude flesh. That second one, Return of the Jedi, was full of information for spiritual cats, man. I thought, honestly, Yoda was breaking it down hard in that one, you know? Anyway, so same thing I was saying. Okay, and here this is kind of just illustrating how when someone's asleep, the assemblage point moves. And this takes us into Carlos Castaneda. Don Juan to talk to him about a being that they called the death. Well, there was a group of death defiers, some that buried themselves within Earth, or warriors that buried themselves in the Earth on power spots. And then there were others. There was another one that was this old man that could also make himself look like an old woman. And he was able to change. This thing was able to change its assemblage point to change its physical body between male and female. We're not talking about no Caitlyn Jenner. It's something different. Okay. And the deal that Carlos Castaneda's lineage, Don Juan's lineage, had a deal with this death defier that it would give them knowledge and certain spiritual exercises in exchange for a large portion of their energy so that it could remain alive and remain keeping that ability to move the assemblage point. So, these are things that are worthy of contemplation. So in dealing with, just us and what we really are as beings of perception, boom, as beings of awareness, boom, that's what we truly are. And that's why I mentioned, we've got things all about when we actually leave this body, how not to lose that self-awareness, how not to lose those immortal souls and soul memories, But it also takes us into, if we know all the knowledge of every spot that the assemblage point could be on the luminous cocoon, as immortal souls and know the beginning and end of every quantum possibility, at a certain point, maybe we don't have nothing left but to wipe ourselves clean as fragments of God so that we can rediscover ourselves and then grow even more. Food for thought, Let me get out this one. Must be honest, folks. I hope everybody's still here with me. It's going much smoother than I thought. I'm almost done too, and then we'll just chat a little bit for but we're not quite done yet, but we're getting there. I forgot to look at my outline. Damn it! Not missing. I'm missing too much there. Okay. Going from there, a step forward into my experiences and how I've actually been in the presence of a MECO before a couple of times. And this takes us into, when people want to manipulate these MECOs, these black holes, but it takes us into the ones that are Earth's natural black holes, unnatural black holes. It takes us into that, into the MECOs, and also, it kind of takes us to another level. Excuse me. There we go. All right, sorry, it's getting blinded out there. Okay, anyway, so we'll just take this into the experiencer part for me, actually. All right, so the one experience that Rudy Shields seemed to take the most interest in was oh, hold on. Sorry. There's something else. Hold on. Whoa. I missed this one. This is it. Okay, hold on. This will take us just a little bit back, but bear with me, everybody. We'll keep moving forward, I promise, real quick. But this illustrates what I was trying to show. This is what I used to see. Okay. The outside luminous cocoon, but it goes further than that. People's luminous field goes like 8 feet, 10 feet outside of their body. Okay. But that's about the spot I would see this black spot. You know what I mean? At least around that area right there between that one, a little more towards the top one, just above that one down there. But that's where I would see the black spot on the luminous cocoon of people, on this energy field. But again, like I said, until I learned, I got a little older in high school, I didn't know what I was seeing. And I didn't think I was seeing because I wasn't seeing the colors. I wasn't seeing green and yellow and stuff swirling around people. That isn't what I was seeing. I was seeing this luminous cocoon that was normally a whitish color or sometimes a yellowish. It seemed like it depended on their health. You know what I mean? The brightness in that way, or maybe their frame of mind too. But anyway, I just wanted to show that because I think the outside illustration is luminous cocoon is somewhat correct, and just where the spot was. Okay, now we'll go forward now. Okay, so I have this experience on one of these crafts, all right? And this one is, I talked about it before, it's the second adult onset experience I had that involved 4.5 hours of missing time. And I've shown other places in this craft, like the first place when this craft manifested around us was this helmet thing, okay? And I was in this room with this helmet, and it's a synaptic helmet, as they were calling it, so it would have a frame of reference for the experience. And I did a whole live on that a couple of weeks ago. And I showed another room that was a room that looked like a cave with these cocoon-looking things on it, all right? But the second room I went to on this craft looks somewhat similar to this. And this is one of the deals that if I ever do get the new AI pictures going, I'm going to get this one done because it could be really much more accurate to what I saw. For me, just to describe to this woman what I was seeing is hard. But what I went to, and I call this, like, I don't know if it was a control room, a bridge, okay? This room had this black crystalline looking beam twisted, going from the bottom to the top. And it had kind of a hexagonal wall shape to it, that honeycomb thing, but just a little different. But around in this room were these distortions, opening and closing. And what they started off with was they looked like a black dot. Okay, a black dot, and then there would be like a distortion around them. Something that looks like heat or something, like when you see a mirage coming off the ground. Okay, and then they start kind of look like they're in kind of a swirling deal, kind of, but they were quick. They were opening and closing. And I've mentioned that this light being jumps on the ground. That's what she's trying to illustrate in the right over there. But it was like this. It was this pink like ball thing. It jumps on the ground, and it starts unfolding, and it starts turning almost yellowish like a sunflower, is what it reminded me of. And then it jumps up, levitates up, and goes into one of these MECOs that's open and closing. These black holes that are opening and closing, and it comes out of another one almost immediately. And I'm getting in my mind, we're like fish out of water in your dimension, in your density, and we can get trapped there. So this room, and I'm gonna tell you folks, keep it at 100. I was getting sick as F, and I was getting sick as heck in this room. When I tell you, I mean, really bad. The dizziness, the temporal aphasia, those things opening and closing, the distortions, they made my stomach queasy looking at them, to a point to where I moved over, and the most stable thing in this room was this damn black beam. So I was using the black beam for support. So I'll show another illustration. Oh, damn. And this is one that I actually never even showed in my presentations. just because I thought it wouldn't interest people. But this is something that Rudy had taken a huge interest in. Of all the, not all the things, but it's more than most of the things. But he asked me so many questions about this room in particular. All right. And interesting, as I mentioned before, he's not a contactee, he's a scientist, but he's very understanding and, cool in that way. Just this room, this black beam, it was big. And it looked to me, the only thing I can say, it looked like it wasn't even slate. It looked like it was almost crystalline to me. And I was holding on to it. It was big, but I was holding on to it with both my arms because I felt like it was going to pass out. And then, but there's these, the honeycomb configurations. And again, she did a good job of making those little black dots that would appear first before the distortion. And sometimes, it was like odd because they would be on the background of these hexagon honeycomb looking walls. Anyway, so Rudy, when we got done talking about this finally, he said, man, he says, Barry, I'm pretty sure that's what he started telling me. He goes, you're dealing with beings that are from another universe. And I said, no, I think it's another galaxy, yada, yada. And he threw something at me, and it was pretty scientific. He said, Barry, what you're saying doesn't hold up. He said, I think these beings were telling you some things you could understand, but they were telling you they're from another universe. And he says, Barry, I believe you were on board a craft that has the ability to internally create and project its own MECOs, its own black holes, and then choose the path for most coherency for its destination. He said that about the other craft I was on board, but this one is different, okay? In terms of that's what he was convinced this was. And he was saying maybe this is more of a central complex controlling brain thing of this deal. And I'm going to tell you, I think they're using plasma to do it. The same way that the other ship uses the plasma beam from that thing that I've showed you that was on top, that's called the directional emitter. They use that to project a plasma beam, high energy plasma beam that opens up a black hole. MECO. So anyway, that's one that he had. And the reason why I was listening to Dolly Surfrin, look, I don't think we're in the same type of beings we're dealing with and not the same technology, but there are some similarities when she said she's seen them black dots, a black dot in front of the emitter. There's no way she could know that unless she'd been there, because that's what I've seen here in this room. And like I said, these things were highly unstable. They were opening and closing within like just a second or so, but they were all over the room. Like Rudy asked, how many of them do you think there were maybe individually? I said at least 12 or more than that. It's hard to tell because they weren't stable. All right. Now I gotta get back to this. Okay. Another time I'm going to bring up, okay? This is that other ship. The morphing UFO that was the one I had the first encounter on. Adult onset experiences. There was like 4 hours of missing time, okay? And I'm show you that for a reason. And this is just one, it's so odd because in this particular room here, okay, this was an odd room. And okay, one thing is when I went up and looked on these little weird things in the middle of this little column, they to me for some reason reminded me of like garage door openings or something. I don't know. It's just odd. Just the way they were kind of tinted a little. And like, if you look in there too close, all of a sudden, boom, you'll be in another room. Just looking in one of those things, okay, that makes you sick. But I more want to reference the holes on the far back and the left there. I can show you a better illustration. All right, just another illustration of that, just to say, because, you know, one problem is, okay, like I said, for me, I'm not being assaulted. It's hard to maintain my cookies, but I'm a curious cat, man. And I want to know what's in them holes. So, you know, I went up and I, you know, I kind of was just creeping over there a little bit. And it seems like just a little after my curiosity was thinking, I wonder what's on there. All of a sudden it felt like I was being sucked down. Okay. And that's when I was in that room that's called that I called the biosphere. I've showed that to you in another video and did a whole thing about that. All right. But point being, I think that this, you know, these walls were very mushroom-like, although they have a hard consistency more than just a mushroom or something, or a toadstool or something like that. Okay. But I believe that we're dealing with something that is also a MECO as well within this organism, in the way a mushroom would have it. All right. But the other things, these eggs that are on other rooms in this thing that I've showed you, that are different than this column in the middle, but those eggs that have that mist in the middle of them, and how there were these lights in them, and how I know now, I think they were command officers. That was actually a cohesive pathway to whatever universe or whatever dimension, whatever they're from. Okay. So that's just something I want to put up another time I've seen that. And one more is worth just showing again, because this is connected also. And I think this is my last illustration. Oh, people are clapping like a mug right now. Oh, thank God. Thank God. All right. And the reason why I'm going to show these, because we talked about this one before too. All right, and this is what I call the gyroscopic engine or brain. And the reason why I'm showing this is because this, along with the other engine crystals I showed you, you know, I've mentioned a lot about bringing other materials from and power sources from one dimension to another. All right, and how that can be done through different shapes. But something I suggested to Rudy that he thought that was absolutely possible, because it is scientifically possible, is that what they are actually doing is containing singularities and drawing black holes and drawing energy from their black holes themselves by that thing that they're calling Hawking radiation right now. And that's what they're using as their power source. That takes us into that type 3, type 4 civilizations that are using the fabric of the black hole itself as a power source. This is 100. That's where I'm coming at. So when you get certain things like this, as Rudy talked about, one would be, as we call the fullerene. This thing down here looks like a fullerene or carbon 60, but more fullerene because it was big, Fullerene, as his hexagons that takes us into the honeycomb conjecture. Why do bees use that hexagon to store their energetic honey and stuff? Okay, but this takes us into that, but that perhaps this structure could contain a singularity inside of it. Okay, and that goes all the way to the others, what I was seeing, this dynamic Casimir effect, which seemed to generate a black spot in the middle of it too. It's another MECO. Okay, so, and in that way, so it's actually, that's what they're using, and why they're calling this black box up there, okay, inertial dampener, and how they're using that to actually collect that life energy and then release that along the skin of the ship for gravity modification, a gravity modification field. How that is connected to what might actually be an engine that is not just temporally displaced. It might contain the singularity itself. Don't mean it's right, folks, but Rudy wasn't, in disagreement with me. It's such an interesting deal with him, because I was talking to him and he started asking a bunch of questions about my mama. And, I had experience with my mother, the first ship I'd seen. And before my mother died, I remember she gave me this article. It was Neil Tyson deGrasse on the front of it. And I like that brother a little bit. He's so not spiritual, though it's kind of rough. But as a scientific man, he's genius, you know. And she's like, you remind me of him. And I said, I don't think so, Mama. That brother's way out of my league. She said, no. She said, no, he's really not. Said that you didn't choose that path to study for your life. Said he's really not. And he's also got a wild streak like you do. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you got a little kind of womanizing thing in you sometimes. And and he was a Chippendale. He danced himself through college as a Chippendale. I said, Mama, I never no Chippendale. I do not strip. She said, I know, but I'm just saying he just had that wild streak like you. So I think he's more like you than you think. I told Rudy that. I said, Mom's off. And Rudy's like, well, I'll tell you something. He said, I know Neil quite well. He worked an understudy with me. He said, and your mama's not wrong. I was shocked to hear him say that. But that keeps it 100. And for me, the whole reason I came forward that makes it talking about this stuff. Like I said, I'm not at Rudy's level or Neil or none of them, but I'm trying to understand what in the F happened to me and what I was seeing and what I was getting through, why I was being shown this. And when I found out, no, I wasn't in one of these programs. I wasn't in MELAB. I wasn't in DARPA. It's none of these things. But we've got other factions, other organizations that are working with contactees. And it's always been that way. And believe they're watching me, they're watching y'all, they're watching all of us that are having this type of contact. You know, anyway, so that's just something I just want to bring up. Just when it comes to these black boxes, do they not just the cube, as Rudy had pointed out, the cube is capable of not just storing what we would call consciousness or energy or life energy. It's also capable of containing a singularity. Now I know, because when I got done talking to him, I asked the Google, can a cube contain a singularity? It said yes. Anyway, so this is just things I'm bringing up to you that I think should be thought about when we deal with these MECOs. I'm sorry, there's one other thing I'm going to show you. I forgot. The one other time I've seen these little black dots, but it was fleeting. Oh, no, there it is. And then I'll talk to her just a little bit. We'll splice it up. You guys can clown me for probably not presenting this right, but we'll see. Anyway, this is on that organic craft. This other one, this one that was the first missing time I had on this other craft. And you've seen, I call this the hyperbaric chamber. Okay, and this is when they had sent me back. I was in that room with that mother of the hybrids. I can't tell you enough. I was about to pass out. Okay, I mean, really, I mean, throw up and pass out. It felt like being pulled down on a roller coaster, or being on a where you lose your stomach, or being on a merry-go-round constantly and not stopping. It's horrible. Okay, and then that smell of that. Somebody asked me yesterday, well, do you think it was an ozone smell? Man, I don't know. It smelled more like Windex and disinfectant to me, but that might be an ozone type of smell. I'm trying to remember my friend that was a grower back in the day, what his grow room smelled like. It was kind of different. It didn't smell like that, but he had a bunch of ozone generators in there. Anyway, sorry, reminiscing. I digress. The thing about this room, okay, once I was about to pass out in this hyperbaric, or this other room where this mother of the hybrids was, is what I call her, although I didn't see any hybrids. But I was about to pass out, and those lights, some lights emerged from one of those eggs, and it felt like they were adjusting my time field. And the next thing I know, they transported me somehow into this room. Okay, and at first there was nothing in there, and I was sitting there, I was like, man, why am I in here? First, I'm too small to even be in here. And it's like I got this backpack on, and there's this tube. I can look behind me, and I can see it going into the top of the ceiling. It looks like there's something pumping in it, but I don't feel nothing, okay? And I keep looking over, and these beings are looking at me in this little organic window. This being Yandar, the being Mana, or well, two beings that looked like Mana. They're that species, but they're smaller. And what's interesting is they weren't phased out. All three of them look corporeal to me. All right. And at that point, I started seeing these balls around me. But, they started off as these little black dots, and then they started looking like super balls, like the ones you bounce around, you play with as a kid. And they started swarming around, a bunch of them. And then I started descending back down to my car. All right. But the point is, these things started off, I think they're singularities too, of some type that are capability to become stasis fields for levitation, or maybe transport. You know, again, I'm just throwing this out here, and it takes an interest when I hear other contactees talk about they get surrounded by these lead filaments. Looks like pencil shavings from a pencil sharpener. Okay, that's not what these look like, but they did start swarming around. They look like they start off these black dots and they turn these little pretty, they look like super balls to me. Anyway, food for thought on that, all right? But that's what I believe when we start dealing with these other situations that are these singularities, and how some of the miniature ones are being, you know, not just controlled by some of these civilizations, but generated. I think it's real important, and real important when dealing with those civilizations that can use not just bilocation, you know, but when okay, one last one. I've shown you this before, but it's important so to illustrate this, because otherwise it's just me talking and sounding really, really weird. Well, you know, when seeing the quantum hologram that I mentioned, this is in the picture I was going to show, but it doesn't matter because it's just a word I want to throw out. All right. When dealing with the quantum hologram and you're seeing one of them, then two of them, then one of them, then neither, like we're looking at pictures of ships that are actually doing that, you know, that takes us into what is actually non-locality. All right. And non-locality, which is not just being in two places at once, that takes us into quantum entanglement, how they're connected, even if they're the same copy of each. You know, it's a whole other thing, how they can be one here, and then before the other one has even disappeared here, the other one is, you know, wherever its destination was through the MECO. So you're dealing with two that are, and they're still communicating with each other through the mirror neuron network. You feel me? You know, it takes us to a whole nother thing when dealing with some of those suggestions of, you know, the space and the things between space and dimensions when we start dealing with the whole quantum entanglement and non-locality, non-locality, excuse me. And, you know, be honest with you, I think this ties into the bilocation technology they use also. And we know they can bilocate our dream body from our energy body. And that's how a lot of people have experiences. That's why I no longer say, oh, physical experiences are better. Maybe it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because we're beings of perception and awareness. So again, non-locality, being in two places at once, quantum entanglement, the quantum hologram, the mirror neuron network. You see the Akashic records. You see how all this ties together. So for all good reasons, we can have civilizations that are using the MECO for their power source themselves, that are like type 4, type 5, and no longer in existence. Okay, they've long been finished for whatever reason. But you know what? They can still connect with us through the MECO and through our brain waves. So this ties us in the divine field. Some of these beings communicating with us are doing that and using the divine field. And the divine field is real. I don't care what nobody says. And it's got certain clauses involved in it. You know, certain things that some of the darks can't seem to do when dealing with the divine field. So anyway, I just want to throw this out for that reason, and that's most of what I think I wanted to say. And I'm going to read through my notes and make sure I didn't get too carried away on anything. No, that's it. That's it. So anybody got any questions? Does that make sense? Or y'all down with that? Oh. Uh-oh. I might be. Cool, it was 4:30. Oh, it's 36. I'm actually caught up. Okay. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. I've been told sometimes I don't explain things that well. That may be the problem. Bosnian Pyramid. Oh, so Carmen, welcome. Welcome. Yeah, you know, that takes us also into something that when dealing with Black Dot, something I've talked about before, which is the work of Dr. Richard King and his African origin of biological psychiatry. And he starts going through Black Dot theory in a different type of a way. And how he does Black Dot theory actually has to do with doing your meditation, your gazing techniques, and certain pranayama kriya breaths while focusing on the eye of Horus, which is pure melanin, which is the Black Dot, which is also a MECO, and just happens to resemble the MECO that is in our brain as well, our pineal gland, and our whole endocrine system. Okay, so and when dealing with that, I've mentioned before how you've got to watch how these negative inorganic beings and the beings that present themselves as just voices, how they start as negative thought forms and then start building energy. And then they used enough of that to use our own pineal gland as a wormhole to start manifesting and creating crap and poltergeist out here in the third dimension. So that's one of those things to always just kind of keep in mind, you know. Interesting. Interesting. I must have been making sense for just a second. Then I probably fell off. By the way, good to see you here, Drew. Truth Seeker, thanks for coming. God 5568. Yeah, that's another situation of that. You know, when dealing with these beings that are using orbs and able to actually contract their energy dream body into a field of energy, or into an orb rather, for intergalactic transport. That's another thing right there. You would see something like that. But that also makes to where they're using that quantum hologram, and you can be like that one Bill Spicer had shown me. He showed me all these pictures of these different orbs and things. He said, that one right there, it's got a Stewie head in it. He kept saying a Stewie head. I was like, who in the hell is Stewie, man? He's like, oh, it's the guy from that one cartoon or something. I started looking at it and I go, I guess it kind of does look like that. Or people say they see Sasquatch inside of those. And when you're dealing with something that may be a ship in another dimension or another universe, could be an orb in this one. Something about maybe the science doesn't quite go, you know? As John Vivinko said, it's kind of different on the other side. Yeah, that temporal aphasia. I mean, that stuff to me is, I mean, it's for that reason, you know, at this age now, I wouldn't want to go through much of that. And I think another reason why we can't stay there for long and they can't exist there long either. It's just a place where they can meet us kind of in between. And you know what's real interesting, Brooke, is that if the original Doctor Who's was different. If you see the Doctor Who's now, the newer ones, when they open up the TARDIS door, just the control room is right there. You see how huge it is in there. It's just right there when they open up the door. In the original Doctor Who, they open up the door, there's just like a black room. And it was supposed to be you enter into that room, which is that original box there, and there's a small hallway that goes into the control room, just a step or two. All right. But that's supposed to actually be the quantum hologram thing, that dimensional shift. They would call it a dimensional threshold. And when people walk across it, sometimes they say, oh, I feel weird. I feel sick. I feel dizzy. I feel nauseated or something like that. Not all the time. That's something in the older ones. Or they get real giddy or something, you know. I think there's a one like my favorite Dr. Tom Baker. His second episode, he had the dude with him, Ian Martin was his real name. Harry Sullivan, he walked in there. He's like, you know, in you go. He's telling him there's a bigger on the inside. It's it. You go, in you go. He's, oh, right, Al. And he walked in. He started, oh, I say it. And they went somewhere else to the Ark. And when he got out, doctor said, man, what were you doing? He said, man, you were messing with the tools. You jolted the thing and you sent us here. And he was looking at it. He goes, I didn't mean to. I feel very strange. He's going like that. It's being on that TARDIS. That's what it's supposed to be. But that's something that kind of they played out and didn't do enough of. But when really dealing with something like these craft I saw, and there's no doubt that the outside and inside are not in the same dimension, it's not really suited for our human bodies. A little bit out of our frequency, density, all that stuff, I think. Vibrational, all that. You know, long before Larry, what's the name, played Morpheus in the movie, there was a Morpheus on Doctor Who. Morpheus, or is it Morbius? That was Morbius. Morbius, one of the evil Time Lords. That, in fact, the episode was called The Brains of Morbius. Never mind, that doesn't count. I was off on that one. Ah, Jessica, what's up? You made it. I thought you might be out in the field tonight. Thanks for coming. They can do that, but they can also, you know, the main way of shape-shifting is by using the dream body. And we always think it must be a physical process. But you got to remember that the dream body doesn't conform to any of the same physical laws that these physical bodies do. And in that way, the dream body can be molded, you know, into about anything you want if you know how to project your intent of will. And in that same way, the assemblage point can be moved to do the same thing. And the assemblage point can be moved to also do a type of a shape shifting too. But that's when start dealing with more of the warlock type thing, that issue. But the way I had first been shown and told about shape-shifting was by purely shifting all of your cognitive abilities into the dream body, then use the intent of will to mold that. So, but yeah, but still, the other time too. What's happening, Toby? How you doing, man? What a great chat, everybody. What a great chat. Appreciate you all being here. Morphogenetic field. Yeah, the morphogenetic field. And Rupert Sheldrake made that kind of more popular right now. And I think when dealing with the morphogenetic field of the planet here, we're in big trouble. And I've spoken before how when you have actually certain space organisms that are on the collective conscious level and how they think are warring on Earth, based on that morphogenic field being generated out of here, and some other things like Project Stardust at home. I don't think any microorganisms on the collective conscious level out in space would like that at all. Hello, Lee. Thank you for coming. The assemblage point is a point of perception, like I said, and it actually is a MECO itself. And the universe is universal light filaments. And the light filaments go through our entire luminous cocoon. And it's the luminous filaments that go through the assemblage point assembles the world that we perceive. Okay, so if you want to say that we are beings stationary of perception, we can say that too. And the universe flows through us as opposed to us ever moving and going anywhere. It's the moving of the perception and the assemblage point that is the only real movement that we do. So that's the way to put that. Anyway, kind of went through the assemblage point quite a bit, so I'm not going to spend a lot more time on that. Ooh. Sunfire Goddess camera, definitely, yeah. It's like that. I think they're referring there to the perhaps the conscious waves. Yeah, right on. The luminous cocoon of humans and the morphogenic field is not the same thing. The morphogenic field is collective consciousness. And when dealing with that, okay, all of us have to be in agreement to have our assemblage point on the same point to perceive the same world. So in that way, the morphogenic field or morphogenetic field, it's also called morphogenetic, they've changed it around a little bit, again, is the collective consciousness of everyone, opposed to just the individual luminous cocoon containing the assemblage point that moves to the various points of luminous filaments going through the luminous cocoon. So like, for example, for me, I had learned how to move my assemblage point just a little bit, and it almost got me into trouble, okay? Because you start being somewhere where you've got no morphogenic field of people there, okay? Not the people that are here on the band of man. You have a chance of that. You'll assemble the whole same world. But you move that assemblage point somewhere else on luminous cocoon, let's say outside, on just the edge, or down to the left corner over here. You don't know what you're going to perceive. What type of worlds? You start going into worlds that don't even, perception isn't even the way we do here, you know, and that's something very dangerous when doing dream practices, following certain inorganic beings through walls and following them through different realms. It starts moving your assemblage point and you get stuck and can't move it back. These are things just to be careful of. And I go through that because I read all Castaneda by the time I was a junior in high school. I had read his stuff like two times. And after that, read it over again because I like pulling out the information that was relevant for me that I could actually use as techniques. That took me into reading every woman that Castaneda was affiliated with, all of them. Florinda Donner, Tasha Ablar, Marilyn Tunashindi. Tunashindi, I think, was probably the most interested one. And what was the other lady's name? Oh, Florinda Donner. God, I named all of them. Tasha Ablar, it was. Those ones. Those are all the ones that worked with him. But I'll tell you, all the people that talked about things like his Tengarity movements and all that, the most interesting one was Marilyn Tunashindi. And she kind of pulled the whistle on him from the get-go, saying that most of his material was no good after the second ring of power. That what he's saying happened to him, the second ring of power did not happen. That Donna Soledad choked him out when she had him in his legs. She had her in between his legs, said he got enslaved at that point. And all the Tengarity movement were to give energy to those women. And I mean, more than that, she even threw it out that he was lying about jumping over the abyss, said he never did that. It's interesting, you know, food for thought, that's all. But I enjoyed reading those women's work too, because of the work that the way they portrayed Juan Mattis, Mario Ariano, John Crow, all these different names that cat had, and Genero too. They described them completely different, and the exercises they did with those women were mostly dream practices, completely different than what Castaneda and those cats were going through. So it's interesting, you know, and I find it fascinating that his name is starting to come up now again. For a long time, I would talk about him and nobody was into him, you know, and now it's all of a sudden this information is starting to come up. But there's good stuff there. And in my personal opinion, I think Tales for Power is probably the best of those books. No, not Tales of Power. God, not Journey to Excellence either. Yeah, I think it is Tales of Power, actually. Tales of Power is a really good one. Yeah, several of them, but that one was a good one. And I'd say of the women, like I mentioned, Tunda Shindy would be the one I follow. I know there's other people that were doing this work too, like Don Miguel Ruiz and people like that. It was good work too. It was cool, but not like the original. It's people spinning off the original, you know. And I had the fortunate of having quite a few Native American tribes in my area. I started asking a lot of questions, you know. Yeah, his original book kind of sucked, man. I thought that was a boring one. I kind of thought, but when you go to the other ones, like I said, Ring of Power, Second Ring of Power, that one's interesting. Tales of Power, um, Eagle's Nest. Few, you know, someone that's interesting. His whole deal of book. I enjoyed most of his books, to be honest. When I started getting uninterested is just after the Art of Dreaming. You started getting Arc of Infinity, and those ones didn't hold my attention quite as much. It seemed like they were kind of more desperate. You know what I mean? And so many things about him started becoming into question, but it's still good information. Like I said, people say, man, Carlos Castaneda, that was all fiction. I said, maybe, but have you ever tried any of his techniques? Well, no. Well, I have. If it's all fiction, how come some of his techniques yield almost immediate third dimensional results? For example, the gate of power. That was one of the most powerful ones I think he presented. That's something I tried, and I didn't know it was supposed to stop your internal dialogue the way it did. I got some weird experiences. You trying the gate of power. Another would be the mirror gazing technique he gave. That's a really good one. Um, those are the ones that really kind of interested me the most. Were those ones? At least I found they were the best because I got into a lot of Kriya Yoga type of stuff too. I liked Paramahansa Yogananda had good information. I was always trying to read some Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who suddenly now is Osho the Mystic. Whatever. Anyway, that guy's been dead I don't know how many years, but or unalived. Sorry, I'm going back down now. A lot of people talking about genetic shape shifting. Yeah. Very cool, man. That's the guy that had the box, right? Man, great chat, everybody. Wow, great chat. Yeah, temporal aphasia. Yeah, and hey, I'll tell you, that's the name they gave me because I thought it was horrible. You know what I mean? Because one thing, I'm like a kid out of school. I was always like that stuff felt like a field trip to me. Since nobody's hurting me or nothing, but I'm seeing things I don't hardly have a frame of reference. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know what I mean? I was that type of guy. But then the sickness was the only thing was tearing it off. And at first I couldn't understand why I hated merry-go-rounds so much. I wouldn't get on them a little bit. And so I started putting it together like, okay, wait, that's what's happening to me at night. And the similarity there, because at first you might even, because I was thinking that what was happening to me at night was just my imagination. I just had a real, real good imagination. And because of that, it was keeping me up at night. You know what I mean? I was so tired. But you find as you get older, it's not quite that. Ooh, I like that statement. Nice statement. Nice statement. Nice statement. I agree. Oh, no. Sorry, I actually messed up. Hey, well, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It's y'all that make the show. It's just me rambling on, really. But interesting. Um, you know, I don't know where that begins and ends because we have those that are human angelics or earth angels, or what that Uranta book calls Uranta angels. And then we've got those that are different classifications. Those that I experienced when I died, that like that called, I think they're super nanofem. Man, I know they were absolutely reducing their energy fields and their energy emitting so that I didn't get burned up. I mean, I've never felt that intense love coming from anything but straight God source. And we don't think that love would be so intense that it could burn us up and hurt. A whole nother thing going on. So I'm sure they were containing some of their energy fields just so I could be in their presence for what part I was. And it kind of reminds me of what John Vivinco had said about those beings inside of Mount Adams, that they're huge, that each one of them is like half the size of that mountain or something. And they're containing themselves so that they can be in that small space. But it causes this like oversurge of energy, like almost entropy, that becomes this huge flash of light above the mountain. Looks like a huge orb up there sometimes. I'd seen it when I was out there once. Yeah, and so, like I said, food for thought. This is what John had said. So it's kind of interesting, though. Oh, no. I'm not very good with these. I keep missing people on the chat. I'm sorry. But I'm trying to get back in the. Susan, thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging with me for so long. You've been around for a while. Since the days I was with, was it Kelly Coffee, I think? You were still hanging in? Hey, thank you. Thank you, Ed Andy. Thank you for being here, man. Similar. I mean, they've got, it takes us into the different types of warp drive now. A lot of people are really into Alkebury warp drive right now. And also things that actually bend, like, for example, inertial drag frame, which is around the spherical object itself. And around that inertial drag frame are the closed time-like curves, CTCs. And once you start accessing that, that gives you the ability to go forward, backwards in time, and time science manipulation, and beyond light speed propulsion. So things like that. I've talked about something else before, which are the Fermi bubbles above each galaxy. And the Fermi bubbles are actually gamma ray like clouds, and they connect like a network from galaxy to galaxy. So if you've got, civilizations that are using actually the MECO itself, and along with that technology that can harness gamma radiation and use gamma radiation, you've got a whole nother type of, I think, intelligence and intergalactic or universal traveling system than we're aware of. Don't think we've quite got there yet. But when looking at things like the Spear network and the third type 3 spheres, and how they leave these huge, as Patrick Jackson has showed, these huge radiation spikes of not just microwave radiation, but also gamma radiation. I found this interesting. Of all things, they're emitting that when thinking about things like the Fermi bubbles, and how the Fermi bubbles can be even more of a connection than anything else. And remember electron diffuse regions too, which is the magnetic fields of the Earth and the sun, where they come together at their very first joining point, creates these portals like every 2 minutes or 4 minutes, called these electron diffuse regions. And we talk about manipulating portals, natural portals of the sun, like Jessica saw. That's the beginning of that, definitely. So, oh, there. I guess I am behind. It says show more. I was wondering when I was going to see that show more comics comments. Oh. I had mentioned that at the beginning of the live, actually, because somebody had, I think it's Quantum Rays, or somebody had asked me in one of the other videos what I thought about Dan Burris and J-Rod. And, you know, J-Rod, first is I've heard like questionable stuff about that being true. Maybe it was Clifford Stone or somebody had said something about that particular story. Can't remember exactly who. But anyway, neither here nor there. There are other beings that have said that. And J-Rod said he came from the future when there was a cataclysm on Earth and humans had to go underground, and they got these insectoid features. Okay, I just took that, but I thought it was interesting when the Hopi has said that about the ant people in the past. The ant people were the result of a cataclysm on Earth. They went underground and just developed these insectoid features. And, you know, that ties us into what I was mentioning earlier about Randall Carlson's the end of the Dryas period, the end of the Ice Age, and how the cataclysms came down and those various meteors hit that caused actually that ice to fly up and create other things that, yeah, anyway, just anything that was on the surface would have been pummeled during what Randall's talking about. So that's going to be the same thing, how the ant people could have come about. You know, I've also heard there was an extraterrestrial species that was involved with humans then and helped create that also underground and various things like that. Good question. Thank you. But there are other species of extraterrestrials that are insectoid, you know, and I've heard different ones about ones that look ant-like that were completely non-humanoid. Oh, wow. Hey, thanks. I try to break it down as much as I can because you got people come out and burn me off, man. I have my degree in social services and human behavior, and not quantum physics or any of that stuff. Oh, sir. Man, damn. Right on. Very, very cool chat. Like there's, you know, these sharp people come here that out of my way, or out of my league. Very cool. Interesting. Uh-oh. All right. Wow, this chat's going good. Interesting. Greetings, Candy Wolf. Thank you for coming. It's all right. I do it all the time. All the time. Constantly. Most of the time, nobody's even around. Yeah. Greetings, Matthew. Thank you for being here. Man, well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate you all being here. Before I sign off, anything else that I missed or completely didn't talk about good enough? Hopefully the illustration helped for anything I was lacking on describing good. I appreciate you all being here. You're very loyal. I'm sorry for getting started so late. I mean, that one was really crazy. I got worried I wouldn't even get the system back up. If I try to do it on my phone, I couldn't get to access it. So I apologize to those of you that were waiting for a little while. But hopefully all the information got out effectively. And it's more just being aware that we can access these MECOs, whether they're little ones on Earth, they're on our bodies, They're in space. Whatever the case is, we can access them through conscious waves. So that takes us from the micro to the macro. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you so much. Much love. Hopefully I'll get to work another one of these next week. Everybody, please share this. All right. I was threatening. Somebody told me that a few times they said I should only talk about UFOs. And the more I don't talk about just UFOs, the more I'm going to get an algorithm that makes my count go down, which appears to be true, but I don't care. I'm still talking. I think just a lot of us, we're a lot more than just being contactees. There's so much more that encompasses all this. That's why I like working with Jessica. We hit so many different things, and she don't get nearly the amount of credit she should get. I'm seeing all these remote viewers coming up now. I'm wondering, like, where did they get trained? And they're getting all this recognition. She doesn't get hardly any. She trained that stuff for years. I would be interested in what these people say. Are they going to tell me they went to like a 2-hour workshop like me? That's not good enough. I mean, it helps, but I mean, it's a lot more than that. If you want to call yourself a trained remote viewer, I think you should have more training than just, 1 or 2 hours or 1 or 2 workshops. And I think the people that train you should be really noteworthy and credentialed. But that's my opinion only. That's what I like about her. Well, I like working with her. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Suggestions, please put them in the comments thing. I'm trying to kind of address some things. People want me to have some guests on and stuff, and I'll probably get to that again, have some people. But right now, I got trying to ramble out this little stuff in case something happens to me or something. Real quick before I leave, I know a lot of people are talking about David Wilcox nonstop. And I had some people get upset with me for a post I made on Facebook. Look, I'm just being 100. Okay, look, the man's work never did anything for me. It didn't give me some great awakening or nothing. So I wasn't just a huge fan or anything. But I do appreciate what he presented was a lot of stuff, and it helped a lot of people. And when it comes to his demise, I think it's disgusting how within 12 hours, people are remote viewing him. They're channeling him, putting out all this information. And I mean, not listening to what his family said. His family said that there was a mental health issues there for a long time. That was just discredited. Oh, they were coerced. You know what I mean? But I think it comes to when having a little bit of compassion is good. And in terms of somebody, regardless, something was wrong, mental health wise. And the one thing since COVID happened is mental health is on Front Street for the first time in history. It's on Front Street. And I think those of us that have the capability and knowledge should be trying to wish him a safe transition and help him cross over. Let that be done and give him a little time, then ask the questions and do all that other stuff. But right now, don't mess with somebody who's still in the middle of transitioning. And I say that as somebody that's done the work, okay, with earthbound spirits. And I can tell you, like when I detect an earthbound that may not be even inside the person's energy field, they're on the outside. And when I try to get survival evidence from them, they step back or they'll stay back. And I start picking up all this shame and embarrassment. And then when I ask why, I say, well, I hurt people. I didn't think when I unalived myself, other people would feel it like that. I was only thinking about myself or something like that I've heard. Okay. And that comes with a certain amount of shame. And, so then, but get them to crossover can still be done. But that says something. And I think that when we think we want to do that and then we actually do it, there's still a major shock that comes with being unalived, even if we wanted to be. It's just the transition is shocking. Just like you might think, you super, super tough, and you're standing out on 100 degree day, and you jump into some ice water, and you think you're gonna go feel it. There's a shock that goes with it, no matter what. And sometimes that shock in the transition period for us is very detrimental. It can leave us lost, thus the name Lost Souls. So I would just say concerning Wilcox, wish him well and help him cross. Then deal with all that other stuff later. We can conspiracy it out later. But right now, that man needed help. Look what he was saying. I got to leave here. That means he was trying to cross over. Okay, let's not do anything that's going to hold him back. That's my view. Don't put on anybody else. And like I said, another problem with his work, He just wasn't somebody I was just all into all the time. It wasn't like that. But I do think he did good work, and he helped a lot of people, especially those that haven't been studying this stuff all this long, like a lot of us have. So that's important. Everybody does their part, and I wish him well on the other side, and I hope everybody else does too, instead of possibly getting him trapped here with a lot of weird intentions. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm just keeping it 100. God bless you all. Thank you for being here, and peace. Somebody's probably going to string me up for my balls by even talking about that. Oh, damn, shut this off.